Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Hello and welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, joined as always by Don Pizzette. Don, how's it going?
It is going great. You know, it is a beautiful, stormy, rainy day outside, and so what better time to celebrate Cybersecurity Month than right now?
But it's winter here now, like the highs in the low 80s.
Yeah. Grab your coat.
It's nice. Yeah, it's a good time. And
Still
Daniel,
like 98% humidity, though.
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah, I think that just means we're swimming at that point. So good to have you here, Daniel. And we're also joined by Brandon Hoffman, who is the CISO over at NetEnrich up in Chicago, and probably pretty upset that we're making jokes about a mild winter. What is it up there right now, Brandon?
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for having me. It's actually not too bad right now, although it did drop into the 40s pretty recently, which was unexpected. I guess nothing should be unexpected, but it's back in the 70s today, so we're working on a win.
Yeah, the 40s, that's when you take out the wool flip-flops down here. But,
you Floridian.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us, Brandon, but we want to get to know a little bit more about you. So let's just go ahead and jump in with our first segment, Rapid Fire Questions.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
All right, so in our rapid fire segment, what we're going to do is ask a couple of questions. You'll have approximately 1 minute to answer each one. If you go over, Peter's got a buzzer ready to buzz at you, maybe. There we go. And we'll continue on. We're going to rotate through people. I think Peter's going to go with our first question. Peter, what do you got?
Sure. So basically, you know, I went on the NetEnrich site, but kind of help me out. Where does NetEnrich fit in the security landscape?
Yeah, so NetEnrich offers what we call intelligent SOC. And intelligent SOC is similar to managed SOC, but it has different layers to it that people can consume as standalone products, but also has a lot of advanced components and, of course, a service delivery component for the customers who don't have enough security people on staff to do it themselves, or maybe to augment some of the work that those good folks are doing.
All right. Now, I know you've been with NetEnrich just for a brief while, a handful of months. There are a number of different managed SOCs that are out there. What was it about NetEnrich that kind of drew you in?
Yeah, so what drew me in about NetEnrich is actually the future vision of the company. From a strategic perspective, we're building a platform that leverages, you know, all the modern technologies, AI and machine learning and AI ops, you know, things like that. And we're taking things not just from security, but also from NetOps and cloud ops, really across the IT space, and trying to solve problems more holistically. So security is one piece of it. We're going to continue to solve those problems and deliver more advanced capabilities there. But ultimately, it's going to dovetail into this bigger platform to really help drive resolution in IT long term. So I thought that was a really interesting vision, and technically, it's going to be quite a journey.
Now, Brandon, little known fact, I'm not aware if you're aware or not, but there is a bit of a sickness going around here lately, and it has changed many people's attack surfaces. What would you say is the biggest change that you've seen since COVID has started?
Well, obviously, the work from home is a huge thing. And the thing that people, I think, have to keep in mind is not just the people who are doing who are working on their laptops in all departments that are working from home. It's also the security professionals. So they might be used to having specific access to tools, being able to take control of machines, or maybe even physically take a machine. And now those security professionals are now working from home. So they have to find new ways to find things, new ways to do things. And of course, having this diaspora of people creates more attack surface because home networks are not as well protected, obviously, as corporate networks. So it creates more opportunity for cyber criminals to do what they do best.
Wait, so you're home right now? Because that looks like an industrial level coffee machine behind you.
I was thinking the same thing.
It's serious business. In my basement, it's serious.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. I want to work from that.
He's like, are you hiring?
So last year, if you'd asked someone to predict what's going to happen in the security world over the next year, they probably would have been wrong. So we're going to put you on the spot. As someone that's been in the industry for a while, what do you see changing? What do you see coming in 2021 in terms of whether it's new attack vectors or new ways people are protecting themselves?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, and I'll probably be wrong too, but I'll give it a shot. I don't know that the work from home phenomenon is going to go away next year, if it goes away at all. So I think the number one challenge that people are going to face in that regard, from a security perspective specifically, is all the investment that we've made in all the different tools and the architectures that we've built. It's all going to really change because this layer of security in between work from home, it doesn't really exist in the way that we need it to. So really next year, I think there's going to be a huge initiative to re-architect how security works in a business that's mostly remote business that we haven't had to deal with in the past. So I think there's going to be a big shift in that regard to understand, okay, what investments have we made in security tools and processes and people that we can keep, and we have to build this new architecture going forward. How's that going to change the tooling that you buy, how the processes are going to work, how you're going to leverage more modern tools. I think that there's a lot of new security technology that people probably have been waiting to adopt because they didn't really have a need for it. More API-driven, security-focused tools and things like that. And I think they're going to be forced to start adopting that sooner than they plan to. And I think that's going to all start happening next year.
It's interesting because I was thinking about some of the different jobs where, as a society, we were in a pretty good place to flip into work from home. There were some careers, obviously, that were devastated, but there were many careers that had already been kind of set up for that. So, like if I was a salesperson, well, I have phones and email at work. I have phones and email at home, so it's not a
probably
big transition.
VoIP anyway. Your phone,
So. No, most of it's switched over. It's not like it's the old PRIs and T1 lines and all that mess. If I am a customer support, again, phone's here, phone's at home. But what about security professionals? You work in the security industry. You're a CISO. Have you been able to just snap into that working from home no problem? Or are you finding that there are tools and things? And specifically, I'm thinking of like, if I was responsible for security at work, I might have approved IP addresses for running scans. And then I go home and I don't have those approved IP addresses. So have you run into any challenges with that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was, exactly right. Those are the types of things that I was alluding to, is that we've all built this security architecture to work in a specific way, right? To scan from a certain place, to quarantine a certain thing, to have traffic flow a specific direction. All those things are going to have to change. So we're all facing those challenges. And what happened in the past couple months, at least with me and some of the colleagues that I've spoken to, is that we've kind of had to build crutch architecture, right? So we have to just make it work with what we have. But all that's going to have to change next year if it doesn't go back to quote unquote, normal.
Would you think that it would be reasonable? I mean, I used to work for an insurance company. We had a lot of satellite offices, and they were using, whatever broadband solution that they had available for those offices to connect with. And we just did basically a split tunnel through a firewall. With things like pfSense, would that be something to where, if the company doesn't have to spend money on brick and mortar infrastructure, could they spend money on sending out like very reasonably priced firewall solutions to homes so that they could better secure them, use something like split tunneling so that they don't have to worry about non-work function, that kind of thing? Is that something that might be the future?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I actually literally just had this conversation last week with a buddy of mine. Is like, why can't we just, build a bunch of cheap Raspberry Pis or, like you said, pfSense, and just send these out to all the users? And I think that's a viable option to a degree. I think one of the challenges we're going to have is, most users aren't technically savvy. So what happens when they plug it into their home network and then something goes wrong, right? They're not capable of troubleshooting it themselves. Troubleshooting something like that over the phone, which is core to the connectivity, also creates a challenge, right? Because if there's no connectivity, how are you going to troubleshoot it? So I think to a degree, if we can really design something that's really plug and play, super low failure rate, easy to use, and provides the security we need, I think that's a viable option. I think also what's going to happen is people are going to start inserting layers of security. So how people connect to the traditional infrastructure that they need to, wherever that might be. I think we're going to see more cloud tunneling solutions, more of that modern VPN technology that's less dependent on infrastructure. I think that's going to start getting leveraged too.
It's almost sad. For the last couple of years at RSA and Black Hat and conferences like that, we have been force-fed this whole story about how you really need artificial intelligence-driven intrusion prevention on your network. You need these devices that are watching the routine traffic, looking for anomalies and filtering that out. That's how you're going to stop the bad guys, is looking for anomalies. But that stuff takes time to train. 3 months, 6 months, you've got to let it run, learn your network, really tune it. And then all of a sudden you have this pandemic hit, and all that training is out the window. All those devices have to start over again on this whole new way that data is moving through the network. So it's really interesting times, and I'm curious to see how 2021 goes.
Yeah, going back to your point, Don, too, about changing when you get home. Like when I went home for the first day, I mean, I didn't have all my passwords are on Post-its on the desk at work, and I get home and I can't get into anything. So yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying there. That's a big issue. Well, I want to jump over while we have a security expert here. No offense, Daniel. I want to get your take on an article this week and see who got pwned.
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality.
Yeah!
All right, so this article comes from ZDNet.com. This worm phishing campaign is a game changer in password theft and account takeovers. The security incident highlights the need for multi-factor authentication in the enterprise. So, Don, can you kind of walk us through first
Sure.
what we're talking about here?
So there was a security organization, not NetEnrich's, but a different one, that was responding to an account takeover. Right, business email compromise is pretty common these days. Phishing attacks are just ubiquitous. I get phishing attacks every single day in my mailbox. It's kind of routine now. But in this case, they noticed something bizarre, which was that it was an incredibly effective phishing campaign. And what they found is they dug down into it that these weren't just like cold call emails, a random email you get out of the middle of nowhere. What they found was that somebody had basically written a bot where they performed a phishing attack and compromised one mailbox. And once they had that one mailbox compromised, they then monitored email for it over time. They were very patient. And their bot was set to automated in a way where it would wait for existing communications to happen. And then, emails might go back and forth 3 or 4 times as people have a conversation. And it would wait until a little further in the communication, and then it would reply. And so that gave it a level of credibility. When people just get an email out of the blue, they can be distrustful. But when it's the 5th reply in an email chain, and it's coming from a legitimate mailbox, they're a little more willing to believe that's a legitimate email. And it contained a link that would say, you need to access this document, click on this link, and then people would click on it, provide their credentials, leading to more accounts getting taken over. And so what they found was it was just an incredibly effective and somewhat ingenious phishing attempt that goes a little bit beyond what most of the phishing attempts have done so far.
So, Brandon, is having a dedicated SOC, is that something that's going to be able to, identify something like this and help you out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that to a degree, some advanced analytics that we have in the SOC, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about, learning and the machine learning, the AI, and how it has to learn the behavior. And a lot of that got thrown away with the work from home. But, having all the telemetry, including email traffic, having that all folded into one place where you can run those advanced analytics still has significant value. Would it stop a phishing attack like that? I don't know that it would necessarily stop a phishing attack like that, because I think we've kind of all accepted that phishing is going to happen and people are going to click on things. And that's why the focus is really around what they're doing with the phishing. So when you talk about password theft to fuel account takeover and brute forcing of accounts and things like that, that's something for sure having a centralized, having something like a SOC with advanced analytics can do. Looking at, has this user logged in here before? How many times have they tried to log in? And taking automated, remediation against that so that the brute force attack is not successful. This, of course, assumes that people continue to ignore the advice to do multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, and this was one of those scenarios where it all did start with one mailbox getting compromised, and if they had multi-factor authentication turned on, that wouldn't have happened, and this whole attack would have been thwarted. So, like, the technology to prevent this is out there. Although, I look at some of this and I think about the old days, right? In the old days, if I worked in a company and I wanted to share a file with somebody, we would have like mailbox size limits of 10 megabytes or something really low. So you had a centralized file share, and you would drop it on your S drive or whatever it was, and then other people in the office could browse to it and access it there. And so you kind of knew, like, this was the trusted location for files in my network. And if the file wasn't in that location, then I didn't trust where it came from. But today we have cloud storage, right? Stuff is stored in OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever else it is that we're using. So it's pretty common for me to get an email with a link out to an attachment that's on some completely separate service. And I think there's advantages to the cloud, and that certainly a convenience side, but there's a lot of risk to it too. And this kind of played on that risk. People expect to see a link to files now.
Yeah, definitely. And Brandon, getting back to SOCs in general, I'm kind of curious because I'm not really sure at what stage is a company big enough to have one, or I guess kind of that's where you fit in for the companies that maybe don't have one in house and want to outsource that model. So, kind of where do you fit in there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different schools of thought on it, or a couple different ways that you can apply our solution to this problem. There's the big of the bigs, right? Who've invested millions of dollars. They have a SOC, it's running, but the problem is that it's not running efficiently. So there's certain tasks, there's certain layers of task, right, that you can have other people do and not consume the expensive resources that you've invested in, meaning people, right, to run the SOC. Takes a lot of people. So the people who've made big investments, they might want their expensive people to be doing more advanced tasks than just looking at incidents, in the SOC. Maybe they're going to be the ones resolving it. So in that case, a solution like ours is great for those folks. For the people who, don't want to make the investment, can't make the investment, or can't have the people to do it, we're a great source to solve that problem for them.
So it's really anybody. I mean, it doesn't matter how small or how big, you can kind of help them out in some way.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and it's certainly not something you want to screw up. So, if you're looking at implementing your own security operations center, then there's a lot of mistakes that can be made. And if you make a mistake in that area in these days, that's going to result in a breach, compromise of customer PII, a huge PR event. That's all stuff you want to avoid. So leveraging professionals is, I think, an important step any company can take.
Well, if people want to reach out to NetEnrich, what's the best way for them to find you guys?
Yeah, just go to NetEnrich.com. All the information is held there. Of course, you can look any of us up on LinkedIn. We're doing a Bright Talk session for part of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month on October 13th about smart devices, which plays directly into part of the conversation we have about working from home, and everybody's got their coffee machine, over here, connected, and they've got everything connected to the internet, and that just creates more attack surface. So it's going to be a great talk. We'd love to have a chat with anybody about it.
Wait, is that one online?
No, definitely not.
I'm like, it's right there. You can touch a button, but if it is, what port?
You could make a coffee on it, but it won't deliver it to you. So
yeah, what's the point at that point?
I know. Yeah.
What a piece of crap.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a big focus this month. I know we're doing an IoT webinar as well, where Daniel's going to be hacking a FOSS cam, an IP camera, and I mean, honestly, that could be anything though. It could be a fridge, it could be a toaster. Or, I mean, that's the example everyone uses. But yeah, the devices are all over your house, so that's a great idea to check that out. And so yeah, head over to NetEnrich and check that out, and check out the webinar as well. But Brandon, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and give us your perspective.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm a fan of the show, so appreciated being here.
Oh, wow. That's flattering.
It was nice to have a real security expert on today.
now we know what we should be getting from Daniel.
Now Daniel's going to be bitter for the rest of the show, and we got to deal with that. Well,
Listen, as soon as you give me that CISO title,
that's true. Yeah.
you can expect that level.
No, you can be the.
Then you're qualified.
Yeah, right.
The head of security.
Until then, I'm
strategy.
just some guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Brandon, for joining us, and stay tuned, everybody. We've got more Technado with Don Pizzette coming up right after this quick break.
IT pros who want to learn on the go? The IT Pro TV Android app is for you. Now it's better than ever with the dashboard view built in. Easily resume viewing, see new courses as they're added, and track your hours viewed. Start up your next episode with the touch of a button to binge watch on the go. Track your progress at a glance, and download episodes as an annual member for offline viewing. Access all IT Pro TV courses with a simple button. Choose landscape mode for larger viewing. Choose your course by category, certification, or job role. Watch anywhere and pick up later on your favorite devices. So head to the App Store and download the IT Pro TV app.
All right, welcome back to Technado with Don Pizzette, and thank you so much to Brandon Hoffman for joining us from NetEnrich and telling us all about SOCs and why we need them.
Yeah.
Keep your feet warm.
Yeah, that's
And why you always lose one in the dryer.
yeah. Just make sure you wash.
I'm not a huge fan of blisters either, so.
Wash your sock. All right, well, let's go ahead. We've got a lot of news to get to, but actually, first, we're going to look back at a recent news article in our favorite news segment, Deja News.
Deja.
News.
All right, so this one is from ZDNet as well. We're looking at Microsoft's Azure AD authentication outage. What went wrong? It's been a rough week for Microsoft users who have first and third-party apps that rely on Azure Active Directory for authentication. And Microsoft has published a root cause analysis of the issues. And I know originally we thought it was something that they rolled out because they immediately started rolling back a problem. Did that turn out to be the real issue, Don?
Sort of, yes. So we do have a little more clarity into what happened, so we know why that rollback didn't work. It's kind of interesting. So there's a lot of IT environments where you have a test environment, a dev environment, staging, production, right? So nothing makes it into production until it's been through testing in these various other stages. Well, Microsoft has that too. They actually have 5 different stages that changes go through before they make it into production. And they call this their Safe Deployment Process, or SDP. Well, it turns out they were doing a routine update to Azure AD, and they were deploying this change to the very first of the rings. So, they've got 5 different rings to get through. This is just a ring number 1 where they test it out. And there was a bug in their SDP, and the bug caused that change to roll straight into production and basically affect the entire planet. So they knew within 5 minutes that things were screwed up.
Well, you say affect the entire planet. I know you were kidding, but it's affected America more than, Europe and Asia, right?
I think it was just the rollout delay. I think ultimately this would have affected
it would
everywhere.
have affected, yeah.
Yep. So, it just completely bypassed all of their protections that they had in place and went straight into production. So when they went to roll it back, the problem is it was a problem in their deployment system. So the rollback was looking at the right ring and not looking at production. And so the changes weren't supposed to be in production in the first place, so that's why they couldn't roll it back effectively. So they thought they had rolled it back, but really hadn't. And then they had to basically get in there and manually do it. And when we talk about manually doing something across thousands of servers all across the globe, that's a big deal. And that's why this outage kind of dragged on for about 8 hours. So it was kind of a big one for them. It wasn't a full outage. They were able to try and compensate different ways. But it is neat to be able to get a little bit of insight into the way their back end is normally protecting us and see how that totally failed this time.
Now, Don, in my WSUS server, I just hit that rollback button and it's gone. I'm good to go. Why didn't they just do that?
Yeah, so, WSUS.
They're not using that?
Well, a lot of these servers are Hyper-V servers that are running Active Directory on top, and so it is all in Windows, so in theory, but they're rolling out not just bug fixes and things that are officially approved. These are things that are testing. And this being the very first ring, it's not unexpected they wouldn't have good rollback stuff put in place for it. But to jump not just 1 ring, not 2 rings, but jump 5 rings all the way straight into production seems like there should be something to prevent that from happening.
I can't wait to see who gets fired. Because it feels like someone is going to go to work for another company.
Well, I think
very
they'll be
shortly.
sent down to the 7th ring.
Yeah.
Is probably what's going to happen.
There's the wailing and gnashing of teeth, right?
Yeah.
How cool would that be? If somebody at Microsoft had read Dante's Inferno and named each of the rings after the layers of hell.
That would be kind of funny.
Well, so the safe deployment process, not so safe this time around. So does it sound like that system worked though originally as planned, because there was a bug in the update, so there's not a problem with the SDP.
Well, I think the SDP worked up until now, and then there was something wrong in the SDP that had just gone unnoticed, and that's what led to this problem. So I think that the update they were writing had problems, but that's to be expected when you're going into the first ring. And then SDP just borked it and allowed it to go right into production. So two different problems compounded, and it does highlight how important, even outside of the cloud, like in your native stuff you have deployed locally on-prem, you should have a staging environment where you test things before it goes into production, and this highlights the importance of that.
It'll be interesting to also, legitimately to see how this, if we ever do get to see how that affects policy at Microsoft. we cannot allow something of this magnitude to happen again. The fact that it was able to jump through all those rings and hit production should have never been. So
Right.
why did that happen? Okay, now let's fix it so that never occurs.
Okay. I'm guessing there will be more people that have to turn their key at the same time to
Yeah.
make the next update happen.
Well, this is a challenge with cloud directories is, how do you set up a staging environment for your directory server? It's very difficult, and it looks like, at least in this case, that maybe there's not a true separation between those environments. You get a lot of bleed over. The cloud is very hard to set up separate environments for.
Well, I will say kudos to Microsoft for sharing how this happened, because this had been, the U.S. government or something, we would have no clue what was going on still. And
Pour one out for my Microsoft homies.
exactly. Yeah. And don't pour it out on your laptop.
Yeah, no, I won't.
If you're doing that, okay, because that's bad. All right, our next article then, or our first article, I should say, in our regular news is over at TheVerge.com. Windows on ARM is about to get lots of apps thanks to new x64 emulation. Microsoft is giving Windows on ARM a much-needed boost. So I know this is something we talked about in the past. I think more with Mac too, of bringing 32-bit things over to 64, and so this emulator is letting that happen on an ARM chip then, which is going to open up pretty
It's
much
a big
everything,
deal.
right?
Yeah, we talked about it a while back that most operating systems had made the change from 32-bit to 64-bit, and they were in the process of killing off 32-bit apps. Well, now they're switching to ARM. Up until now, you just had a 32-bit x86 emulator on ARM. And so these old apps that were being killed off were the only things that would work that weren't native ARM libraries, right? Well, Microsoft has rolled out a demo, basically, of their 64-bit emulator. And so they've shown it off. It's going into some of the fast ring testing right now. And that means, devices like the Surface Surface Pro X that I've made fun of. It's got an ARM processor in it, so it can't run crap. Well, now it actually can run some things. We don't have any information on performance yet, so I'm waiting to see how well this emulation layer works. But if it does work out, this will help ease that transition over to ARM processors.
How does that work? Is that emulating it on the device, or is it through the cloud somehow?
So that they haven't released the details on it, but it pretty much needs to do it on the device. That typically the software you're going to want to emulate is software like Adobe Photoshop or something that you need up and running that's going to have its own licensing requirements. And so running it in the cloud and bringing it down local is not usually an option.
This just seems like it's we keep talking about all these ARM-based devices now, and that's becoming more and more popular. And everything I'm seeing is apparently because less power, cheaper. So for the end user, me and you out there, we really benefit from having ARM-based devices. And now that we're seeing more and more porting of apps and things of that nature to come over into that sphere, really makes this a win-win for us, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. The Intel processors are great, but they've become increasingly less efficient over the years. I mean, you've seen the size of heat sinks growing and growing and growing, the number of fans in your case growing and growing. They just can't, they generate too much heat. And Intel hasn't done enough to correct for that. Whereas ARM, you can have 128 cores and still have passive cooling.
Will they emulate all my buffer overflows that I've created in x86 architecture, or do I have to rewrite those?
I think some rewrites might be in order.
Crap.
But I'm sure they have all new ones. It's a brave new world.
It is.
Well, this is great too for the new devices, isn't it? What's the Surface Duo? Is it? The two-screen thing.
Yeah, the Duo runs Android. It's an ARM device. I doubt it's powerful enough to do emulation like this.
Oh, okay.
But we'll see. It's just unlikely.
So should I bust back out my old original Surface RT?
Well, now the Surface Neo that was supposed to come out here in a few months, but now it's pushed back to next year. That one's running Windows X or Windows 10. It is called
No one knows.
Windows, I don't know, whatever, 10X, 10XL, double XL.
I still don't know if I have an iPhone X or an iPhone 10.
Magic Mike XL? Something.
There you go. Yep. So when that one comes out, it would certainly benefit from this if they did an ARM processor, but I think they were still leaning towards Intel and AMD for that.
All right, cool. So this is just an announcement at this point, and we'll learn more as we get to some of those releases. And so, yeah, that'll be cool, though. That's definitely kind of opens up those to a much bigger market, I think, so that's good for them. And on the flip side is our next article over at the USA Today, where we always go for our tech news. AT&T is shelving DSL and may leave hundreds of thousands hanging by a phone line. And I get the move. It's probably not a moneymaker for them, but it seems kind of, I don't want to say dickish, but during a time when so many people are working from home and doing school from home, internet connectivity has been an issue for so many people. And this might be the only option a lot of people have, I think.
Yeah, DSL has some challenges, right? So when it first came out, it was impressive, especially compared to dial-up, right? Dial-up, you were lucky to get 33.6K, kilobits per second. But with DSL, you would routinely get 2 megabit, 4, 6, 10, maybe even 15 megabit of bandwidth out of it, and that just blew away dial-up. But that's where that technology stopped. It stayed there for the last 20 years and has not really advanced beyond it. And you had distance limitations. You had to live within 2 miles of a DSLAM, like a central hub, to be able to even get DSL at all. Well, in rural communities where you already had phone lines run, this technology dropped in and it worked out well. But since it hasn't picked up, it hasn't increased over a really important number, which is 25 megabit, it doesn't actually qualify as broadband anymore, according to the FCC. And that's put AT&T in a spot where they don't get credit for it as far as FCC's requirement for a rural broadband. So there's really no incentive for AT&T to keep working on it. And they've been pushing out fiber in more and more markets where you get gigabit. And so this is old technology. So what they've said is starting October 1, so it's already started, they will continue supporting existing DSL, but they are not selling DSL subscriptions to anyone anymore.
So if you've got it, you get to keep it. Are they going to maybe upgrade those customers to try to phase out DSL and give them a higher level of service?
Well, they've got to run fiber lines for that.
Yeah.
That's the issue. So
Yeah, fiber is their offer. They also have satellite internet, which running
there's
along.
not. There's no such thing as satellite internet. It doesn't exist.
Well, he will attest to how painful it is. But they are obviously pushing fiber, but they're not running fiber out into rural areas, and that's why the article is saying it's leaving some people hung by a phone line. Is they can go back to dial-up, but it's hard to find dial-up service anymore.
Yes, true.
yeah, I thought Daniel was saying that satellite doesn't exist because we're on a flat Earth, and how are you going to have something
Well, there is
circling
that.
So
Well, obviously.
it would keep running into the turtle.
Yeah.
If the satellite
That's holding everybody up.
Is
Yeah.
it a turtle or an elephant? I thought it was an elephant.
There's both of them right
There's
there.
a lot of
Sure,
theories, and science isn't. It's still out on this.
Yeah.
We're not sure.
I mean, what good are scientists
Maybe-
if they can't tell if it's an elephant or a turtle holding
Maybe
up the
it's
earth?
both. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Ooh, an elephant with a turtle shell.
holding
Right.
up an elephant holding a turtle up. Yeah, we don't
Could
know.
be. Could be.
We don't
Yeah.
know.
There's just possibilities around
All I
this.
know is stay away from the edge.
You heard it here first on Technado.
All right. Well, I doubt a lot of people listening still have DSL, but you can't anymore.
Yeah. No,
So-
they still get it, right? They still
Yeah, you still, if you
support
got it, you can keep it until eventually. I'm sure we'll have an article in 10 years.
They're just snatching the
where
rug
they're
out from
going.
underneath them.
The last person just got off DSL.
Yeah. Well, I bet AT&T and everybody was probably hoping that 5G would be further along right now and just say,
Just
hey,
get a
these guys
phone.
can use cellular internet. But that's, we're still years off from that.
Yeah, we're gonna need some more towers, and
Listen,
people keep burning them down.
I was at the Verizon store just the other week, and they had it on good authority that 5G was moments away from being available.
Hold your breath.
That's what I was like. I've been hearing that a long time, brother.
Take a deep breath. Maybe that's why they delayed the iPhone launch, because 5Gs just aren't ready.
Yeah, well,
They got 4 of the Gs lined up.
Yeah.
Just cannot find that 5th one.
trying to get 5Gs all put together in one place is hard.
Have you
Yeah.
ever seen 5Gs in a single
Warren.
spot? Warren.
That's the only one I can think of right now. Any other G?
Is there any other-
Ice-T was the OG.
Yeah, he was the
Yeah.
OG. Yeah. Well, anyway, there's 2, but you're right. I mean, it shows you how difficult
right,
this
how
can
difficult this is.
be. Yeah. All right. Our next article is from
Kenny
Tom's,
G.
Yeah.
Kenny G.
Kenny. You're right. And getting Kenny and Warren in a room together.
Oh man, that's fiery. That's a bomb waiting to go
Did
off
Warren
right there.
die, or was it Nate Dogg that died? One of them.
That was
passed away.
Warren Sapp.
Warren Sapp, I believe, is alive and well. Apologize to his family.
Not that Warren Sapp.
Oh, okay.
The other Warren
Warren
Sapp.
Sapp from middle school.
Yeah, duh. Remember he built that hydrogen bomb?
Oh, yeah.
Blew himself to hell.
Yeah. All right, moving
We'll take
on.
your word for it.
Yeah.
Please,
It's all over
moving
the
on.
news.
Tom'sHardware.com is our next article. OWC unveils world's first Thunderbolt 4 hub, 3 extra Thunderbolt ports, and USB-A. OWC launches Thunderbolt Hub to connect all of your Thunderbolt devices, but you have to use one of them for power, right?
Well, so actually, interesting fact. No. Yeah, so it's really cool. I have asked this ever since USB-C started coming out, is that nobody makes a USB-C hub, not a true hub, right? So if you plug this, what they call a hub into a USB-C port, maybe it gives you a memory card reader, some USB-A ports, things like that. But nobody takes one USB-C port and turns it into 3 USB-C ports or whatever, right? So if you have one of those Macs that only has 2 USB-C ports, you're pretty much stuck at 2.
Welcome to my hell.
Yeah. So OWC has unveiled what is they're flagging as the world's first Thunderbolt 4 hub. And granted, not every USB-C port is Thunderbolt 4, so keep that in mind. But Thunderbolt 4 gives you 40 gigabit of bandwidth, and they're running it into this hub that has an Intel chip inside of it that allows it to break out into 3 more USB-C ports that all support Thunderbolt, obviously at a reduced bandwidth because you're kind of bottlenecking on that one uplink. But it sends a message to the industry that, hey, this is possible. And OWC is doing it first, but it won't be long before you see Belkin and other people starting to release Thunderbolt 4 hubs. I'm excited for it. I would not buy this one. It's priced at $150, which is actually a really good price for a device like this. But OWC has a history of being like terrible with firmware updates, and so on a first-gen device, you don't want to buy it from OWC. But in the future, as we see other companies releasing these, it'll be really handy. So I'm glad to see somebody is finally releasing this.
Well, as somebody who has a MacBook with 2 USB-C ports and who works with connected dongly things, I will go ahead and say that I don't give a flying fornication about having another device that I have to connect. I just want a flippin' laptop with flippin' ports on it that just works. I don't care about the speed increases and all that other stuff anymore. It's so frustrating to have to connect things to make my laptop do the things I want it to do that I'm just ready to move away from that.
You know, and that's I have my Lenovo T480, which I know is getting a little bit long in the tooth, but I'm hesitant to give up this laptop because it's got so many ports.
You're living the sweet life. That's
I
why.
know.
Come over to Danielville and know the living hell.
Yeah, it sounds
that
like
is
Danielville sucks.
Yeah, it does. It does.
He has
Giant,
DSL in
sucky.
Danielville.
You go to
Oh,
Danielville,
man.
you got to like roll up your windows.
You do. You
lock the
better.
doors.
Because we will straight up steal that Lenovo.
Give me those ports. How many ports you got?
Yeah. What you got in there, man? You got on my ports.
So I don't know how computers work or technology
or wash
So-
between your legs and crotch.
Yeah, so I'm just curious. Like there's a speed maximum for each port that you have. So like if I had 3 things to plug in and I had one of these hubs here, should I put a couple of the things into my computer and then just less of them into the hub?
It depends on if they're bandwidth heavy, right? So if you're hooking up a 4K monitor to that Thunderbolt port, it's going to consume 10 to 20 gig depending on how the monitor is configured.
Okay.
So if
What's
I
my
have,
max, like 40?
This one maxes out at 40, so you could actually have 2 4K monitors running on it and be just fine, right? But let's say that you had a third 4K monitor. You could plug that in
look at
here.
me.
But yeah, I know. But you'll have a bandwidth issue. So at that point, you'd want to plug one in locally to your machine if you can. And that was kind of the thing that held us back with like the old hyperdrive and stuff, was that it didn't give you more ports. It just passed through the existing ports that you had. So here you actually end up with more ports, but you do have to think about bandwidth, power consumption. It does say it provides 15 watts of power on each of the ports. So those are good things. But there are limits to it.
Yeah, so they can keep going up on the number of ports, but it doesn't matter.
And you have to plug it in, right? It has a like a
This one looks like it has power.
a power. It's
dedicated
powered. So there's another thing to tether you to the like. It's just, again, it's just annoying.
You would use this like a docking station.
Yeah, you wouldn't take this
Unless you're
on the
me and you
airplane.
have to go into a studio and connect to things.
Well, there's that.
Too bad. What am I connected to?
Personal problems,
I
I think.
What are you
no,
connected
no.
to? The internet and power.
Hey, how do you think I'm connecting that IP camera on that webinar you're all hot and bothered about?
I have a Foscam, and it does not have USB-C.
It does have a network cable, though.
That's true.
And a network Ethernet port, which my MacBook does not.
Huh.
Yeah.
So yours only has 2? I've got 4.
Yeah.
What else do you have that I don't have then? Do you still have an
Nothing.
SD card
I have-
reader?
Nope.
Wait, you just have...
I have 2 USB-Cs, and
that's
that's
it.
it.
That's
because-
it?
That's it.
Because that's what Johnny Ive said.
What's on the
Yeah.
other side?
Absolutely nothing.
If you have
Headphone
a touch
jack.
bar Mac, you get 4
Oh.
USB-C, but if you don't have the touch bar,
But then
you
you
only
gotta.
get 2.
But then you gotta have a touch bar.
How did I get a nicer computer than Daniel?
I would argue that was nicer. The touch bar is garbage.
Sounds like Daniel is going to be leaving the Mac world soon.
But the touch bar, I just programmed it so it's an arrow pointing to my 4 ports.
That's it.
It's like 2 more ports over here.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Why does your touch bar say "suck it, Daniel"?
By the way, how many devices do you have that are USB-C? By the way,
My adapter,
that's
my dongle.
that's it. Yeah, that's another.
That is a good point.
all my dongles are USB-C.
Yeah.
So there's that.
So you can connect all your real devices.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. My keyboard is what is that? USB-A?
My power adapter.
Yeah, my power adapter. That's it. That's it.
Nope, nothing.
There you go.
My new YubiKey
All right.
C.
Thank you, OWC.
All right, our last and final article is over at tech.slashdot.org. Windows XP leak confirmed after user compiles the leaked code into a working OS. And I guess XP is kind of at that age where you start to expect leaks and need to put on some protection for that.
Well, this news actually broke last week, but I passed on it because it wasn't confirmed, that a huge leak of Microsoft source code was posted on 4chan, which is another great source of
That's
news.
still a thing? I thought they got rid of that and
That's
moved
never
like
going
8chan.
anywhere.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
there is 8chan.
Oh, but
the
4chan
4chan still exists. Yes.
So anyhow, it got posted there. Somebody grabbed all this source code, threw it onto a BitTorrent feed, and so it is being distributed. In it claimed to have the source code for a ton of stuff. DOS 6.0, Windows NT 3.51, Windows NT 4, NT 2000 or Windows 2000, and Windows XP, just the straight-up source code. A couple of Microsoft employees off the record said it looked like incomplete code, but this week, someone took the code and actually compiled it into a working operating system, proving that it is the legit stuff. The source code of Windows XP has leaked. Why is this a news article, right?
Yeah,
Windows
that's what I
XP is
wanted
not
to know.
supported anymore. Who cares?
I'm going to start selling my own XP.
The problem is a lot of technology used in Windows XP is still used in Windows 10. Windows 10 is not like some fresh new rewrite of everything. So, it still relies on some things inside of it that are just part and parcel of Windows XP. So the theory, and we'll see what Daniel thinks because he'll have a different perspective on this, is potentially attackers could use this, dig through the Windows XP source code to locate vulnerabilities that weren't noticed before and see if those still exist in Windows 10. Daniel, is that a realistic fear?
I mean, it seems plausible, at least, that would be the case. It just depends on how much code base is being shared between XP and the current version of Windows or any of the other versions in between. I guess that would also be something you have to look out for, because if that's what they're doing, they're basically building off of previous versions and, hey, this is not broke, so we're not going to fix it, but we are sure as hell going to add it to the next version of our operating system. Then yeah, if you find something that's wrong and it shares that code base with any of the other operating systems, it should in theory work. You should probably just have to do some minor modifications for architecture or environmental things that could cause it to be a problem. But
yeah, I think if you think back to Windows XP and what's been added since then, right? So Windows XP had user account control added as an afterthought, right? It was bolted on in like Service Pack 2, and the Windows Firewall was bolted on in Service Pack 3. So that stuff wasn't originally coded in the OS. And then starting with Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 10, now all that stuff is built in by default. So there have been a lot of security features added since Windows XP was reached Service Pack 3 and end of life and all that. So I imagine if you start digging through the code and locating vulnerabilities, many of them are probably mitigated by stuff we have in place now.
yeah, but then you see things like Deja Blue or the when we just got the zero logon, right? Is that going to be a problem? Like this that translates backwards, right?
That's been around a long, long time.
That seems like if it works on 10 and it works on 7 and 8 and XP, so that would make me think that there are some lurking problems that just haven't been discovered and now could possibly be.
Yeah.
And we'd see a new wormable type of malware or something.
And with a compiled OS, they would have to do like fuzzing or something to be able to try and find this. But now if they can just look at the source code, they can
just go
spot,
crazy. Yeah.
And I guess they would look for, there's easy stuff. Like it's easy to spot a variable that's not typed right. And so you can do a buffer overflow or something, right? That's easy to find.
Yeah, you'll see those things that just kind of stick out because they thought, well, it's buried in, or you just missed it because there's a lot of code that's going on there. You got multiple developers working on things.
Millions of lines of code.
Right. This is why we are doing, or you should be doing, static code analysis, having people look over that things and make that part of your secure SDLC.
Yeah.
So.
And Windows XP was written at a time when Microsoft was not security focused, right? Remember,
that's right.
They did that whole 1 year where they froze all new features to focus just on security. That's what Windows XP Service Pack 3 was all about. So it's potential that there's a lot of stuff in there.
It's very likely, and I noticed that in this article, I followed it to the original article. I think this was when those was this Slashdot? Yeah. So I followed it to the original article that the Slashdot was talking about, and there were YouTube videos within that post of the person saying, "Oh no, I compiled it and it worked, and here's a YouTube video of me doing." They're all struck by Microsoft the copyright claims. Yeah, so it's all down right now.
Oh, well, I just got mine compiled.
There it is. Good job. Good job, Peter.
So yeah, what did it take? 4 minutes.
That was
50
nothing.
seconds.
Nothing to it.
Yeah, so it's straightforward. Oh, that's probably they used the sound, that audio, to flag it for copyright.
Yeah.
Now,
violation.
I do have a little doubt. I'm a little skeptical because compiling. If you've ever just compiled software yourself, if you build something from source, it's a pain in the butt. You got to have the right compiler. There's all sorts of compiler flags that have to be set. You've got to have the right versions of libraries. It is hard to build code, compile code yourself, even when you have instructions on how to do it. So that some random guy we've never heard of was able to take a massive collection of source code and compile it into an actual running operating system, I'm a little skeptical on that.
Microsoft should hire that guy.
If it worked, that just goes to tell you how complete the code base was. And maybe they just stuck it through the compiler and everything went gravy. And
Yeah, it's really a compliment to Microsoft.
What compiler, though? Because
who knows?
A lot of it's written in C, or it can't be Visual Studio. We just fire up VB6.
Yeah, I would assume it's some C code, but
I am ignorant on this, so I'm talking out of a place of no information.
I would assume that if Microsoft is striking their video down, because if it was bull, they'd be like, yeah, this guy's obviously full of crap.
Yeah, go ahead, waste your time.
But if they're going, no, to take that down right now, they have IP that's being shown, and they don't want to see that.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm ignorant on it too, so I'm glad I could help on that.
Peter,
on that
you
article.
ignorant slut.
Yeah.
Once again, now we almost were safe for children the whole time. Because
that was from
Daniel,
SNL, though. It's okay,
it was,
right?
yeah. But Daniel said fornicator instead of the other F word, so
It was a
we were
good
clear. But I said dickish, so I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Does that catch?
We're in a gray area.
Yeah.
I feel like, but we passed it there.
We're in one of those shades of gray.
Yeah.
But then again, when we put all those things
All
together
50
in
of them.
one 30-second clip, that's probably enough.
Mr. Van Rysdom, did you say the word dickish? Was that what you said? Oh, wow.
Tarnation. All right, we've got a great webinar today. If you're happen to be watching this right when it comes out on Thursday, October 8th, it's Secrets of IT. Are your devices spying on you? Where Daniel will be live hacking into a real IP camera. But don't worry, if you're listening to this later, you can go back and check out itpro.tv/webinars and find the archive of that one. Should be a lot of fun.
I was going to do a fake IP camera, but then I thought, you know what? I'll go with a real one this time.
Yeah. Well, it's not like a Daniel cam.
Yeah.
It's
a
a
Daniel cam.
real purchased on Amazon.
Yeah.
Camera. But we've also got one coming up later this month on Thursday, October 29th. Don is going to be doing lessons from the dark web using a Raspberry Onion router for secure internet access. So, I mean, what we were talking about earlier today with Brandon of having your own little firewall, we could set up our own little Raspberry Onion router and be totally safe then, right?
Totally safe.
I mean, if the dark web's taught us anything, it's a very safe place.
It's very safe, yes.
So again, itpro.tv/webinars. You can register for both of those and also see the archives if you're catching it later. And while you're on that internet, head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. You can get a team trial. You can also check it out and get a 30% off coupon code for yourself for your personal plan. And that's good for the lifetime of your subscription. So you get that price and you're locked in. Even as we raise rates through the roof every year, I'm sure probably you are locked in. It's coming, so lock in now. That's a good promo, right? It's like a sense of urgency, I feel like. That's at go.itpro.tv/Technado. All right, well, thank you again to Brandon Hoffman for joining us. NetEnrich.com is their URL, so check them out as well. And, we made it through another one.
Yep, and now we'll brace ourselves for another week of pandemic IT news.
Yeah. I'm sure this week is the week that nothing will go wrong, and it'll all be happy stories about great new tech that's coming out.
Yeah, if there's one thing I know, it's the closer we get to the election, the more positive and upbeat the news gets.
Yeah, the stock market should be doing great today. So.
It's amazing.
All right, everybody, take it easy. We'll see you next time right here on Technado with Don Pizzette. Bye-bye.